Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is today, and welcome back. We're waiting for the tubes to connect themselves all across the fruited plain of the interwebs before we get started on this lovely and amazing and incredible Friday. We made it through another very busy week. It's very nice to have you here. We've got a great stream planned ahead. 3 doozies of a segment coming up. We're talking about Judge Boasberg. So quick rundown on what we're getting into, and then we'll get into it. But remember Judge Boasberg, the judge who was demanding that Trump turn the flight around, bring those illegals back or else, and then held him in contempt, and then had the whole thing vacated by the Supreme Court, and then he held him in contempt anyways. And now we're battling over a second injunction. There it goes. Hello, locals. Well, we're back on the Boasberg case today. We had a submission come in, a memo in opposition to the second preliminary injunction that we'll go through. This was a second attempt, right? The original injunction was vacated by the Supreme Court, said you don't have jurisdiction over that. Then the judge said, well, I've got the power to hold you in contempt. And so since I can hold you in contempt, I can do other things like consider another injunction. I'm going, what the hell's going on here? So the Trump DOJ, Homeland Security, ICE, State Department, and the rest of them came back down with their opposition and their response to the gang bang lawyers, JGG, and the rest of them. So we'll read through this. This, of course, is out of the District of Columbia. Judge Boasberg presiding. And we'll see what is inside. We got 49 pages of deliciousness. So we'll hit the highlights of what's happening there. This is a big one. The Alien Enemies Act, Trump being held in contempt, and a bunch of other stuff is cooking. So we'll start there. We've also got some updates from Bill Melugin and the ICE director saying, we're going to come down and crack down on these sanctuary cities. And so there will be more deportations happening very soon. So all that is coming up. Then we got some Kilmar evidence that just dropped. 2 little bits of news that we're going to see. First of all, we got about 5 minutes of body cam that was released on this puppy. And here is Kilmar. And in this passenger seat is a person. I don't know if it's a man or a woman. I heard a congressperson say that he thought that there were females in this car. But what we'll see here is the full body cam conversation with Kilmar. And then we'll ask ourselves what this cop had to say about what these people were doing and whether they were just going to work construction. So we'll talk about that. Then more audio, because we had another release come from USA Today, which was a bit of a surprise. And it's Jennifer Vasquez, the wife of Kilmar, who apparently in this recording is saying, he slapped me 3 times. Which is a little bit different than what she's told the media, that he's a loving, caring husband and she misses him. Now, she was also out today talking about the pain and suffering that she is in, saying it's been 50 days of pain and suffering and we need help. So we'll go through that. We've got more reaction from Chris Van Hollen. He's still out there talking about this dude, but the audio's bad. The traffic stop is bad. Dude is clearly gangbanger status. And Trump released this video. Pretty moving here. You can see a bunch of parents, angel parents, who've lost their kids or loved ones to illegal aliens. They're going to keep screeching at us about 2-year-olds and cancer patients and illegal aliens like Kilmar, who's a barber, or the gay hairstylist in San Francisco, or whatever. They don't want to talk about the parents, the citizens of America, who've had their lives completely upended and destroyed as a result of illegal aliens who should not be in the country. So we'll talk about that. And then we had this very nice clip from Senator Eric Schmidt, who was explaining the disaster that is upon us and why, as a senator from Missouri, it's not going to continue on. So some good stuff there on the Kilmar case. Then another update coming out of Arizona. We've got a criminal complaint here, against this fella called Joshua Castro, United States citizen, date of birth 1995. You might be saying, well, who is this person? Well, he used to work for Katie Hobbs, the governor of Arizona, as an inspector down at the border former produce inspector. He was fired, now been arrested for smuggling illegal aliens. Oh, so Katie Hobbs is like, well, we're opposed to this and everything. And she's kind of got egg on her face on this since one of her employees was smuggling illegals into Arizona and the United States. So that is happening. Now, YouTube is saying you guys got kicked out of the chat. What's going on over there? Why is this happening? I don't know. Hopefully everything is working. Are you guys coming in loud and clear? Hopefully. All right. So hopefully everything is okay. Locals, any problems? How's Rumble doing? Not getting any warnings on my end. Tubes are clogged. It's Friday. They're trying to interfere with our tubes on a Friday. All right. So here, as you can see, a bunch of other stuff to get to. We'll take a look at a couple of those documents because that dude was arrested and picked up. He was smuggling 2 people in. They were paying him some good money, some big buckaroos to bring these people in. So we'll look at those documents, more reaction to other efforts around the country. And Tulsi Gabbard is even saying that there will be more prosecutions, not only for illegals, but also for those crossfire hurricane folks and the people who tried to set up Trump the first time around. So prosecutions everywhere. We've got corrupt inspectors in Arizona, corrupt judges, hopefully now corrupt crossfire hurricane people, all getting prosecuted. And shout out to Megyn Kelly, who had that sit down with Tulsi Gabbard. Super cool. So got a bunch of that coming up, a little bit of Trump action from last night and more. And my friends, it is a beautiful day. We're glad that you're here and with us. And you may notice on the show that your boy now has this little band on his wrist. It's going to be measuring some of my vital signs, which is very good. It's just a standard wearable. Got a new health coach, and so we're going to be measuring some of the intake, some of the output, measure the sleep, measure the heart rate, and all those things. And I'm actually very curious to see what happens on the show, whether it's like depending on the segment. So you'll see that. That's what it is. Nothing strange. It's not an ankle monitor, I swear. But we're trying to take care of our health here. And speaking of health, let's talk about Take Lean, baby, because you can get some lean at takelean.com. And you're probably going to think I'm talking about right now weight loss injections. I'm not. Okay. These are some testimonials I'm going to share with you about this supplement called Lean. It's a supplement. Patty S., she said this. She says, quote, I finally found a weight loss product that works. I wanted to lose 20 pounds and Lean really curbs my appetite. Lori M. wrote this. She said, I've struggled to get weight off and Lean has been a lifesaver. I've been losing a couple of pounds a week and more. And Kelly F., she said this, amazing. I immediately noticed an energy boost and healthy weight loss in weight that I would promote this product to anyone, said Kelly. Well, so Lean, as you see on your screen, was created by a doctor and university researcher to target the same things, the goals of the other GLP-1s and the stuff you hear a lot about, but without those injections and all that other stuff. The studied ingredients in Lean have been shown to lower blood sugar, reduce appetite, burn fat, converting it into energy. And so if you're struggling to lose weight and healthy diet and exercise isn't enough, check out Lean. Lean's for you. So you can get started 20% off. Go to takelean.com, use code Robert20 at takelean.com, and that's how you'll save 20. Use the code Robert20. Takelean.com. And of course, as a disclaimer, results always vary on these things, and these statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. It's not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent any disease. It's not a substitute for care from a healthcare provider, but it is a nice supplement. And if you're interested in trying it out, go to takelean.com and use code Robert20 and get your Lean today. We're getting healthy, baby. We're going to see what the statistics look like after we're done here. All right, so we'll keep our eye on my heart rate. Now, let's get into the business on the day. Thanks for checking out takelean.com and supporting the show by visiting our sponsor with the link in the description box. All right, and so now let's get into it on the day. Without any further ado, we've got some business to attend to starting now. The Trump DOJ striking back against Judge Boasberg and the gangbanger lawyers. You see, this is the case out of Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, involving JGG. And this is Judge Boasberg, the same judge who said, Trump, turn those airplanes around. He was flying all these people out to El Salvador. He said, literally, turn them around. Trump didn't do that. The judge said, why not? He said, because you don't control us. You're not the president. And the judge ultimately had his jurisdiction, in my opinion, stripped from him by the Supreme Court of the United States. They said, you can't have this case heard here. They need to bring it in Texas in a petition for a writ of habeas corpus. So you can't hear it. But the judge kept the case, invoked contempt powers, and said that gives him control of the proceedings moving forward. And under that made up contempt power, he doesn't have contempt. You can't hold someone in contempt for an illegal order against a co-equal branch of government. The case law does not support that effort, even though he says it does. But with all of that happening, he's now considering a second injunction under the contempt power. So if it's like you're creating an outline, it's just nestled into all these different powers, but the first chain is cut off. Now, here is Trump's response to the request for a second injunction after the Supreme Court said the original injunction was invalid. They write, all right, Judge Boasberg, we're back. And here's what we have to say to you there, buddy. All right, this is the gangbang lawyers' second attempt to challenge President Trump's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act with respect to Tren de Aragua in America. And this is happening in a district in which none of the affected individuals are located. Yeah, Washington, D.C. The gangbangers are not even here. They're citing footnote 1, and they're going to say, okay, they're just telling us who's who. Now, the Supreme Court decisively rejected the first attempt, and you can look that up. And the second one should meet the same fate as well. The fact that we're even in here is a joke and a scam. I mean, it's really an insult to the Supreme Court, who said, you don't have power over this. He found another exception to say, yes, I do. Now, the president properly designated members of Tren de Aragua as alien enemies in his proclamation. And as a result, the government has been steadfastly attempting to remove them while fully complying with the law. Now, these people, the gangbang lawyers, have responded by attempting to disrupt the lawful process by throwing theories at the wall to see what sticks. And unsatisfied with the Supreme Court's rejection of their first line theories, the first injunction was vacated. The gangbang lawyers have concocted 2 new innovations to establish jurisdiction in this court. Made it up. First, they claimed that some respondent in this district, someone, must have constructive custody over the aliens removed to El Salvador. In other words, somebody in DC, Rubio, Trump, Nome, Bondi, somebody has power. They don't know who exactly or how it works exactly, but they're in DC. Somebody's in DC. Washington's here. Congress is here. It's all here. So somebody's got power. They say, not so. Are you guys ridiculous? Nobody in DC has any power here. Those aliens are in the custody of a foreign nation pursuant to its laws. It's in El Salvador. El Salvador is not in your district, Judge. The United States does not have custody, so there is no jurisdiction. And second, their claims that aliens and their criminal custody, they claim aliens in criminal custody may be removed to El Salvador at some undefined point. And so therefore, custody exists in this district as well. But that is just pure speculation, and that doesn't establish custody or jurisdiction. So, Judge, you lack jurisdiction to grant the relief that they seek here. Supreme Court has already said it, and logically, it follows here. But in any event, even if you think you do have jurisdiction, the JGG gangbang lawyers, they fail on the merits. The United States has and will continue to provide procedural due process. And this is, just to be clear, right? This is something they've always provided. Due process was always provided. It just wasn't enough of what the left wanted. In other words, the left would have you believe that due process is a criminal trial jury by peers with appointed lawyers to determine whether somebody's in the country illegally. Like, you want a jury trial to determine whether they're here illegally? You want a jury trial to determine whether they're actually Tren de Aragua? Are you out of your mind? They're illegals. They're not here. We're not charging them with crimes. We're just getting them out of the country because they don't have any basis to be here. Now, if you do want to charge them with crimes, if you want to incarcerate them, then indict them. Pam Bondi's doing that too. Both things are happening simultaneously. But while they're getting afuera out of here, they're getting plenty of procedural due process. We've already confirmed that. And we've got the Kilmar case coming up next. but we'll see what they talk about here. Now, petitioners' substantive due process rights and Fifth, Sixth, and Eighth Amendment claims, however, are not cognizable against the United States and are baseless in any event. And petitioners' complaints with the proclamation are similarly non-justiciable. So you can't even hear these cases, right? You can't substitute your judgment. And they can't file substantive due process claims, challenging the basis of the law, challenging equal protection claims, and all these other things. They're aliens. They're not lawful citizens. The procedural, and this is why due process, and it's such a complicated area of law, and that's why people, I think, have a difficult time talking about it out there. Even on CNN, I listen to these people talking about due process. I'm going, oh my gosh. And you've got procedural due process. And when we talk about that, we're talking about the notice and the opportunity to be heard, essentially. What are the mechanisms, the check boxes that you have to check as the sausage is going through the factory? Whereas substantive due process is more like, can you make this thing? What are the claims? Can you do this? It's broader and more substantive. So here, petitioners' complaints with the proclamation, you can't judge Trump's decisions. Trump is accountable to the people. That's why we elect him and the administration to make these decisions. We didn't elect the judge to substitute their judgments for the executive. But even if they were, the president had ample basis to determine that Tren de Aragua is a foreign nation or government, that there is a predatory incursion and more. And given that, they're not going to win. And the equities also don't favor the gangbangers, as an injunction would disrupt our sensitive foreign affairs and literally keep terrorists in the United States. And as a result, this should all be denied. And here's the background. All right, Boasberg, for the second time already, in March, the president issued Proclamation 10903, invoking the Alien Enemies Act, saying we're going to remove the Venezuelan nationals right out of this country. In the early hours of March 15th, the 5 named plaintiffs, here the putative class, which the Supreme Court allowed to be created, another class of Tren de, we got 2 gangbangers that we're talking about, Tren and MS-13. Both have class actions going now. They initiated this litigation, and they sought immediate injunctive relief. You can't deport us. Now, in their lawsuit, they sought habeas when they originally filed. They said, we're unlawfully detained. But then they dismissed their habeas claims. Why? Because they screwed up. If they had a habeas claim bundled in with the rest of their claims, the judge would have had to dismiss all of their case and said, wrong court, got to go file in habeas in Texas. So they stripped out the habeas claim, which is the right claim. And the judge just said, well, I'll just continue to hear the rest of the case based on the APA, Constitution, and other substantive arguments, which are not allowed to be heard. Proceeded on other causes of actions. The court then issued 2 TROs preventing the removal of the named plaintiffs, so the people on the airplanes, or never got moved, right? The actual people who are party to this lawsuit are still here, and prevented all of the rest of the certified class, wrote the minute order. Now, after the DC Circuit Court of Appeals denied the government's request for a stay, saying, let us continue to do this, the government applied to the Supreme Court to vacate Boasberg's TROs. The Supreme Court granted it, said, because the aliens' claims fall within the core of a writ of habeas corpus, they must be brought in habeas. Jurisdiction lies in only one location under the law, the District of Confinement. The court further held that the aliens are entitled to notice and opportunity to be heard appropriate to the nature of the case, right? Due process. They're aliens. They're not citizens, including that they're subject to removal, which is notice, which is due process, within a reasonable time and a manner that will allow them to actually seek habeas relief in the proper venue before the removal occurs, right? So it's notice and opportunity within a reasonable time to file and to make their claim. In other words, you don't give them notice as they're getting on the airplane. Hey, you're being deported. Buckle up. See ya. That's not enough time. Got to give them 28 hours, 48 hours, and whatever the argument is. Now, some courts are saying 30 days. Other courts are appointing the ACLU. So they're just like notified. Another case, another case, another case. Dang, they got them all. Like they're just appointed attorneys. But in defiance of the Supreme Court's decision, okay, and so for all the people who constantly lecture, Trump is disobeying a Supreme Court order. He was ordered to facilitate the return of Abrego, Garcia, and all that stuff. which we've talked about ad nauseum, just ask them this following question. Why is Boasberg ignoring the Supreme Court? He vacated the TROs, said you don't have jurisdiction over this case. He's still holding the case and entering and considering more preliminary injunctions. It's because the Supreme Court is not being clear. Everybody can do whatever the hell they want because they're just writing stupid opinions and not solving anything. So Trump is in total compliance with the Supreme Court. He did facilitate the release with due deference due to the executive branch. He's executing the exact due deference that he is entitled to, which is to do nothing. Now, petitioners persist in their efforts to anchor this habeas litigation outside the jurisdiction of confinement, right? So they are not in DC. How do we stay in DC? After an unsuccessful attempt at a third TRO, writes Trump, these gangbang lawyers amended their complaint to add new claims on behalf of two new subclasses so that this case could stay. A subclass of aliens detained at CCOT and a subclass of criminal detainees. So then they moved for new emergency injunctive relief for a fourth time. We're back here again, Boasberg scrambling to keep the case. This time, they seek an order requiring the government to facilitate the return of the putative CCOT subclass. So all the people who are already afuera gotta come back because they're a new class of people in a foreign country. To the United States, they also want an order enjoining the removals of members of this subclass. Now, as Deputy Secretary Landau, writes Trump, makes clear, the members of Tren de Aragua and CCOT are being detained under the authority of El Salvador. It is a sovereign nation, in case you didn't know. There is no binding agreement between the United States and El Salvador that provides the United States with control over these individuals. You see that there? Wow. So when Zenas sees this, she's going to say, that's not true. You paid them. Don't you have the right to get them back? And we'll see if she buys this, because she's already approved and authorized Discovery to get her hands on these documents. In fact, I think today even there are depositions that are probably happening and due in that case. So she says, I want to know what the contract is. You can bring Kilmar back because just cancel the contract. Just don't pay them anymore. They'll release the people. Pam Bondi said she'd give you an airplane. And so just go send an airplane down there and bring them home. They're going to say there is no agreement. Once they're gone, they're gone. They're done. They're not our citizens. Hello. They're gone. A plaintiff seeking a preliminary injunction. Now, they're going to give us the legal standards here. We can fast forward through this a little bit because we've talked about, I don't know, about 500 injunctions filed already. But the court, they say, you can't hear this case, Judge Boasberg. The Supreme Court already confirmed this. Now, their first innovation to try to bypass the Supreme Court's ruling is to say the United States does have custody. They say, well, you do. They're in a territory of and by agents of a separate nation. They say, well, okay, they can say that, but it's just not the case, okay? There is no basis on which they can claim that the United States exercises any control over El Salvador. Now, to the extent the United States and the El Salvador government made a bilateral arrangement, it is not an enforceable agreement providing the United States can obtain or retain control over aliens that are imprisoned on their soil by their guards. And in any case, the burden is on them, the gangbang lawyers, not us, to make a clear showing that this court's order will likely affect the desired outcome of their habeas petition, which is released from Salvadoran custody. And because they cannot do that, this court lacks both constitutional and statutory jurisdiction over the petitioners in El Salvador. You can't control what's happening in their country. Now, at the outset, the Supreme Court's own definition of custody for habeas purposes demonstrates the futility of their argument. Let's begin with the statute, they say. This applies to those held in custody under or by color of the authority of the United States. And in custody is when the United States has him in custody. Okay, it's clear, undisputed. They're in El Salvador. They're not actually within the United States physical custody. They can't even invoke constructive custody by saying, well, they're the imprisoning sovereign is our agent, right? Like El Salvador works for us. The United States, they say, has no control over the actions of a foreign sovereign. Now, as the courts have repeatedly confirmed here, Control over detention and the detention site is key. This case is not like Boumediene versus Bush. These are the terrorist cases that we've been waiting for weeks now. Oh, here they are. Back in 2008, when Bush was in charge, where the United States did have control over the place of imprisonment, which was in Cuba. Those are the Gitmo cases. Instead, the case is closer to Johnson versus Eisentrager, which is a 1950s case. As the Supreme Court explained back then, the state's control over the prison in Germany, which were housing prisoners back then, was neither absolute nor indefinite. And the same was true in this other case in 2010, where the district court found no habeas jurisdiction exists, even though the aliens were held by the U.S. military at an Air Force base because the U.S. was merely leasing the base and did not have de facto sovereignty over it, right? So in other words, many other examples where we've handed people off to different locations and the court said, oh, they're gone, nothing you can do. Here, not only does the government not have sovereignty over CCOT, but it doesn't even have a military presence or a lease at all. So that defeats habeas jurisdiction in this court, and you can't have it here. Judge, you can't hear this. Now, even more analogous is this other case. United States versus Dulles says there, the petitioner pled guilty to crimes while stationed in France, served a 5-year sentence in a French civilian prison. The wife petitioned for a writ of habeas corpus there, saying, release this man. The DC Circuit said, there's no jurisdiction here. We don't have control over a French prison. What are you, nuts? Get out. Likewise, in another case, same thing, Japanese. We can't control their custody. There's no custody here. So this court should avoid significantly expanding constructive custody in this novel manner. They don't have custody over prisons in France or Japan. Are you crazy? Indeed, here is even less of a reason to find the United States has control over El Salvador. El Salvador is a separate sovereign over which the United States has no control. There is no bilateral treaty between the U.S. and El Salvador over prisoners. El Salvador makes its own decisions, and any bilateral arrangement there may be between the United States and El Salvador is not an enforceable agreement that somehow allows the United States to retain degree or control over these people. Indeed, the corrective machinery here is non-judicial. The prisons are operated exclusively by the Salvadoran government, which has its own laws and procedures. And guess what, Judge? It's not for U.S. courts like you to question a separate sovereign's choices. In fact, the D.C. Circuit, above you, your boss, credited the United States Declaration, and it no longer had custody or control of Guantanamo Bay detainees transferred to Afghanistan or the Sudan. While petitioners argued that their habeas petitions were not moot due to collateral consequences, the court held that the harms were traceable to a foreign sovereign. And their response, citing these other cases, is not supportive either. Their primary evidence that the U.S. has custody comes from a handful of vague statements by a few officials that the United States is paying El Salvador to detain petitioners. Let's see. In related context, public statements by officials have not been credited as evidence of the purpose behind an executive policy. Like in other cases, you don't go outside of the official policies. So you can't go and say, well, that guy said this, that time on that TV show. Well, that doesn't matter. The policy is what we say it is. It's right here. Just because some weirdo from the administration, was goofing off on some show somewhere doesn't mean anything. Such limited out of context statements cannot establish that they're going to win on this. This is contrasted by a clear official declaration under oath that the United States does not have custody or control over these petitioners. You got vague statements from somebody else. Okay, whatever. Somebody's saying this on TV. But we say right here under oath in a declaration, we have no custody or control over this at all. El Salvador makes its own detention choices as a separate sovereign, and that should suffice. It's a sworn statement by the administration submitted here as Exhibit A. It says, hey, listen, I am Christopher Landau. I'm the Deputy Secretary of State, and as deputy, I do a lot. Now, I'm aware that this lawsuit has been filed on behalf of the named plaintiffs in 2 subclasses, including aliens and CCOT, seeking an order to facilitate the return of a subclass and an order enjoining the removal of more. I provide this declaration based on my personal knowledge and experience, and here's what I can tell you based on everything I know. One paragraph here. El Salvador is a sovereign, independent nation with its own domestic law and international obligations governing the detention of individuals. El Salvador makes its own sovereign decisions, including with respect to detention. Signed by Christopher Landau, Deputy Secretary of State. It's on a map here too, Judge. They should send him a map and a globe. And it's right here. Point to it. It's right here. Go visit sometime. And it's its own country. It's a real place. We don't control them. They have a president and people, and they vote, and they do all sorts of things down there, and they make pupusas. It's great. Check it out. So it's a real country. You should look it up, Judge. Check on Wikipedia or something. So they're referencing, right? That's alone. That's it. That's enough. Now, petitioner's position, the gangbang lawyers, is at odds with this court's interpretation of its own TRO. Boasberg, interpreted its TRO as stopping the government from removing members of a class or transferring them into another country's custody. The court also found probable cause. The government violated that order by not turning the airplanes back and ordered the government to purge that contempt by asserting custody of the individuals, right? So the judge said, it's crazy what this judge has done. The Supreme Court said, you don't have jurisdiction. Your injunctions, your TROs are vacated. The judge said, well, now you're in contempt, but you can cure the contempt by complying with my illegal vacated TROs that he had no power to pass at all, to order at all. So he's almost in direct contravention of the Supreme Court and saying you can purge that contempt, right, by complying, by just doing what I said. Well, I didn't have to do what you said. It was illegal. Well, do it. And you'll purge your contempt. And the Supreme Court is just sitting there, just allowing this to happen. Like, petitioners defended the court's interpretation and order on appeal. But the court's order already established that we do not have custody over these people. Okay, El Salvador does. So you can appeal it all you want. If we retain custody, as they insist, then it could not have violated the court's order, nor could the government purge the contempt by asserting custody over them if it always had custody to begin with. So you can't have it both ways. This court, the United States, and even the petitioner realize the reality. We don't have custody of people in CCOT. The separate sovereign nation of El Salvador does. That's it. The case is over. One last point related to custody, though. Even if the United States were to take steps to, quote, facilitate the release and return to the United States as they seek, they have not shown that these actions would have a substantial likelihood of effectuating their release from custody. It's their burden to show that. They haven't even attempted to show that. They present no facts or allegations that the U.S. could obtain the release just by merely asking. They say, well, just call Bukele. They say, well, what if we do? What do you think is going to happen? They think, well, who's going to release him? Well, you don't know that. What's your evidence that he's going to do that? Well, you have none. Okay, so then we don't have to make the call. They instead focus on whether the United States sent the detainees to El Salvador, which is undisputed. We know he did, and its motives for that. But they merely assume without any actual facts, it's just an assumption, right? It's not a fact, that the existence of a bilateral agreement about detainees means that the United States is their custodian, right? You have to have a contract. You paid them for something. So what? People have contracts and change things all the time, pay for stuff all the time. Doesn't mean you're in control of the thing you exchanged. That is not just contrary to the realities of international affairs. It's also a failure of proof on an essential element of the irreducible constitutional minimum of standing. Now, the DC Circuit rejected a similar argument that the court might order the government to take all steps within the power to alleviate their injury because you got to have some traceability. You can't have stuff that's too speculative. Well, you just have to fix everything. What, Judge? What specifically? You got to tell us what to do. Otherwise, we'll be out of compliance with your order because we don't know what you say. It's a due process problem for the people receiving the order. What are you telling us to do? We have no notice, so we cannot comply and will be held in contempt as a result. So you got to have specificity. This court lacks the jurisdiction because the U.S. does not have custody of them, and they don't have standing for the remedy they seek. Like they'd say, well, there's an agreement. Well, the agreement says what we know it says. So if you say it says that we're in custody of that, you have to allege a fact. You can't just presume that. The burden is on you. You don't just get to come into court and start lobbing allegations based on assumptions, and then we have to act based on your assumptions. What is your evidence that we're in control? We say we're not in control. Our declaration is here on its face. So if you think that's a lie, you got to present evidence otherwise. This court lacks jurisdiction over the class. Now, the second innovation that the gangbang lawyers are trying to do to bypass the Supreme Court, to skirt around it, is to say that individuals in, quote, criminal custody may challenge their future confinement in this court. Now, that argument also fails for all the reasons that their same constructive custody argument fails, and doubly so. It's completely speculative that anyone, much less every member of the class, will be confined in CCOT under the custody of one of the respondents in this district. Like, you can't say that that hypothesis or that hypothetical is going to come to fruition unless you're speculating. Indeed, some of the class members may be in state custody for years. A lot can change by then. And the cases they cite don't support their claims to the contrary. So the confinement and injury were wholly speculative, which is just what's happening here. And so this court lacks jurisdiction over the putative claims because they haven't articulated a clear basis for the elimination of the class. Now, the government is providing adequate due process here. So this is the point that we wanted to spend some time on, because we've seen a lot of debate over about what this means exactly, telling us the petitioners, the ACLU gangbang lawyers, once again argue that they are not receiving sufficient notice and opportunity to seek habeas. That's wrong, okay? Due process is flexible and calls for such procedural protections as the situation demands. It's not the same for everything all the time. Now, this is especially true when it comes to immigration and foreign affairs. The Constitution gives the political department of the government plenary authority to decide which aliens to admit and the power to set the procedures to be followed, a Supreme Court case from 2020. Now, what the Supreme Court required is this: notice that they're subject to removal under the Act, so they get a little notice and letter, and within a reasonable time that actually allows them to seek habeas relief in the proper venue. That's it. Opportunity, reasonable time, and opportunity. It didn't say that they had to be granted a hearing before the removal, okay? They could actually seek it if they wanted to, but it's not mandated to them. That is exactly what the government gives them, okay? And they all got it. The government gives individual notice to all aliens who are detained or may be removed under the proclamation, who have been determined to be members of TREN and are cited for removal. The notice is provided in a language that they can actually read, generally through an interpreter. The alien is also informed that they can make a call to anyone they choose, including a lawyer. Now, once they get the notice, they have at least 12 hours, to express an intent to file a habeas petition. After that, they have at least 24 hours to file a petition. Now, in practice, they often receive more time, as they can file at any time prior to their removal. So it's like they're sitting in custody. They are working with lawyers. They're already working on this stuff. Then they get notice, and then they get 12 hours. Just let me know you're going to do it. And then after that, okay, here's a lawyer, find a lawyer, get it filed. Generally, once a habeas petition is filed, the alien will not be removed until the petition is adjudicated. Now, given the serious national security interests at stake in removing members of a terrorist organization, that is more than sufficient due process. And I agree, plenty of time, plenty of opportunity. And we read through on the member stream this morning, we'll release a segment on it, Pam Bondi's memo on the basically 3-part validation process that they go through. 3 separate people check on the status of these people. We read through the form this morning, and that'll come up separately. But it is completely reasonable for non-citizens, people who are illegal and who have been identified as being terrorists. Now, in fact, courts have rejected due process challenges to the Alien Enemies Act and removal procedures, including a case without a hearing, saying, in this case, called Watkins, there was no hearing before removal. And they said that was fine. The ability to seek a full habeas adjudication is even greater here than it was in that case. We're giving him more protection than the Second Circuit case. And the amount of notice provided to seek such habeas relief has been deemed sufficient in analogous contexts as well. It says, take expedited removal under the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigration Responsibility Act back in 1996. The entire purpose of the act was to substantially shorten and speed up the removal process. We got like 20 million people we got to work through here. and have not shown that they were in the country illegally, they got to go. Here's how it worked. If an immigration officer determines that an alien is inadmissible without valid documents, they shall order the alien removed. That's it. One officer, no valid entry documents, without further hearing or review, unless the alien indicates either an intention to apply for asylum or a fear of persecution. Now, even if the individual claims asylum or fear, the process is scarcely more involved because the immigration officer can quickly deny the claim. Oh, yeah, no, you're not fearful of anything. Yes, we know. Yes, I know you're scared. Papusas, attack, gangs, got it. In fact, Congress was explicit on how fast this process was supposed to be. They wrote this down. They said, review shall be conducted as expeditiously as possible, to the maximum extent practicable within 24 hours, but in no case later than 7 days after the date of determination under the subclause. And they continue, telling us the DC Circuit is held. That is sufficient. We see no reason to disturb that prior analysis, and that was because the Supreme Court has been clear that the power to expel or exclude aliens is a fundamental sovereign attribute exercised by the government's political departments, largely immune from judicial control. That happens here. Much like the Alien Enemies Act, the executive branch is given sole and unreviewable discretion to determine who is subject to expedited removal. So if 24 hours for someone who may have resided in the United States for 2 years is sufficient to satisfy due process in a prior case from 2023, then it surely is sufficient for that category of persons who the president, commander-in-chief, has determined to be enemies in the United States. Okay, so if some person who's living here, normally, let's say, without being a terrorist is identified, 24 hours gone. So if it's a gangbanger, 12 hours or 24 hours, let's say 12 plus the 24 is plenty. It would be perverse to hold otherwise, in fact. If the government provides at most 24 hours of notice, there's no due process issue at all. And as noted in practice, aliens receive much more time anyways. But then the ACLU and the other gangbang lawyers who are in all these cases, they point to a district court order and to practices during World War II. They say, oh no, we got to have like 30 days. A TRO from another district that is being appealed right now does not justify the sweeping nationwide one-size-fits-all order here. Due process is flexible. It's in our case law all over the place. Now, as to 30 days provided in World War II for the Germans, the DC Circuit noted that that proclamation was less than the scope of the act, and the procedures reflected the restraint with which the AG has exercised his authority. In addition, more time was required to provide notice, communicate, file claims, hold hearings. World War II, they didn't have the internet. Now, given the generous procedures provided at the time, the process in World War II hardly marks the minimum of due process, right? So in other words, in that case where they gave 30 days, they're like, well, they were just being exceedingly generous. And they even noted that. Exercise with his authority. A lot of restraint there. Now, regardless, many of the named petitioners here have received sufficient notice and due process. In fact, one person who's a party to this lawsuit called TCI, the representative for the criminal custody subclass, has been in custody since January 2024. He had notice of his removability for weeks. So why is he even here? The original named petitioners have been in custody for months. They've already filed habeas petitions that are and will be adjudicated. Now, this is likely true of the other class members who have yet to be removed as well, which illustrates why a class certification here is totally improper. And the Supreme Court has stayed removal in the Northern District of Texas for 2 weeks, offering more than enough time to seek habeas. By the time that they can be removed, they may have had more time than even their position demands. Like they have months, not just 30 days. In addition, even those who have already been removed had some notice prior to their removal. But regardless, the Supreme Court said after the date of this order, so we don't need to go backwards and pull people back out. Now, what we're saying to you, Judge Boasberg, is we are not illegally detaining or punishing any of these aliens after removal. Now, as has been made clear, the government of the United States does not have custody over anyone in El Salvador. So the government cannot be detaining or punishing aliens that it has removed from our custody. When they're in CCOT, We're not punishing them. That's El Salvador. They're theirs. They assert that detaining them after removal violates the AEA. Like, you got to just drop them off there, but you can't put them in a cell, and constitutes criminal punishment in violation of substantive due process, right? So now they're making another claim. Well, practically what you're doing is violating our substantive due process, because you're essentially charging us with a whole new crime by deporting us and putting us into custody in our home countries or in El Salvador. This theory remains contrary to this court's contempt order, which found probable cause that the government transferred the class members into another country's custody, right? In other words, the judge said, hello, that we sent them into their custody. So how can we be punishing them and violating their substantive due process, we, the U.S. government, if they're in another government's custody? We can't be doing that. So obviously it's logically inconsistent. Just read the words. That order acknowledges the aliens were transferred. So even if the government had custody for habeas purposes, which we don't, it could not control how El Salvador treats its detainees. And we cannot raise or sustain such claims in any events either. Now, we get to some substantive due process. They say that the gang lawyers claim that detaining them after removal is criminal punishment in violation of substantive due process, right? They weren't charged with crimes, they were just removed. If they're charged with a crime, they go through the Article 3 courts. Again, the government doesn't have custody of them. We're not responsible for what El Salvador does with them. Even if the government had constructive custody over them for habeas purposes, which we don't, that would not mean it had control over the conditions in El Salvador, like Kilmar was El Salvadorian. If they're being punished, that's their problem in El Salvador. It's a separate sovereign. Talk to them. Courts cannot remedy the fact that a foreign sovereign is exercising its legitimate discretion. So conduct in El Salvador cannot be attributed to us, so leave us alone. Now, in any event, even if the United States did have some control, courts must be reluctant to expand the concept of substantive due process. For example, even in DC, see, this is what I was explaining, I think a couple of weeks ago. I was saying they're going to have a hard time saying that you got to give these illegals a bunch of rights, because they already said the terrorists don't get a bunch of rights in the terrorist cases during the global war on terror. And like, that case law was aggressive based on the Patriot Act and everything. And we're all sitting here going, uh-oh, they're going after the terrorists. They're kind of coming after us, saying, yeah, even the DC Circuit said, nope, they can't bring their claims under substantive due process back there. And CICOT is the same. Here, it's not even like at Guantanamo. The U.S. not only lacks de facto sovereignty over CICOT, but unlike Bagram, it does not even have a lease or military presence there. So CICOT is operated by El Salvador. Detainees cannot bring claims there against the United States, even if it had custody there, right? Like, they couldn't sue when we had some level of control in other cases. We have no control here, so they definitely cannot sue. And even if they could raise these claims, they can't show that they're going to win. To show that we intend to punish them, they're relying on vague statements that are not policy. Those statements don't demonstrate the purpose of punishing anyone. Even statements by the president don't establish a particular purpose behind the policy. The legitimate non-punitive purpose is public safety. We want the gangbangers out of here, and that's justification enough. Now, they conclude that confinement is excessive. They say, well, CICOT's different. They said, well, we're detaining them here. Okay, we'll just detain them down in CICOT and give them to them. Yeah, but that's excessive, they say. It's too harmful. They make them duck their heads when they run. They say, well, we don't even know what that means. It's excessive? What? If they are raising an excessive force claim under Kingsley, well, they haven't put that in their document. That's hilarious. They're like, well, we don't even know what that means. They know they're not raising an excessive force claim, but that's like a little jab there. If you're raising an excessive force claim, you didn't include it. If, as you suggest, this is a deliberate indifference claim, well, you got to establish that. We don't even know what you're saying. And they haven't submitted anything that's showing it's punitive, and so that claim fails. They cannot maintain any substantive due process claims on that basis either. Now, they also bring some constitutional claims, Fifth, Sixth Amendment arguments, saying, oh, this is basically criminal, right? Like, you're basically prosecuting us, since CICOT is like torture. And the Eighth Amendment. You're violating our Eighth Amendment rights as illegal alien terrorists in your country. These, again, rest on intent to punish, and they fail for the same reasons. We don't have custody over them, so we're not punishing them, first of all. And since they're not here, we can't hear their Eighth Amendment claims either. Now, even if the government had custody, which it doesn't, what El Salvador does is within their prisons. If knowledge that a foreign nation seeking extradition might violate U.S. standards of due process, it could disrupt treaties and more. And so courts should avoid the involvement in these areas that are outside of its scope. They talk about the Convention Against Torture and other claims. But this continues. They also argue that the Alien Enemies Act does not authorize detention after removal, right? You can just drop them off, but they can't be contained there so that they can just come back across the border and invade a second time. Again, they're not in our custody, but we don't have control over them or what they do, and they can't bring a claim in this court anyways. You can't review this proclamation. It's a separation of powers problem. For more than a century, you've held that the AEA is not a proper subject for judicial scrutiny. And the Supreme Court has already said in this case, the AEA largely precludes judicial review. Have already said that in this before. The Ludecky case doesn't support their view that a judge can override a decision by the president, and their citations don't support that claim either. The Supreme Court has also held that the political question doctrine is a function of the separation of powers. And what the president decides goes to the core of the separation of powers, and the courts cannot interfere in that. We've already talked about how this is an invasion and a predatory incursion. The president has a textual commitment to prevent that from happening. And so the AEA proclamations are conclusive and they're preclusive. You can't question them and you can't challenge and subordinate them. All of the courts have no role to play. The other statutes don't supersede the Alien Enemies Act, and other statutory of withholding or removal claims. Nothing here constrains the president's actions under Title 50. The individuals subject to removal are barred from asylum and they're barred from withholding of removal. Same thing with Kilmar. We made this point weeks ago. Once they invoked the Alien Enemies Act, statutorily, he was no longer eligible for withholding of removal by operation of law. The Attorney General said so, overrode the judge. So he could have been sent to El Salvador for two reasons. One, the order said Guatemala. And two, the withholding of removal for El Salvador, even if you think it was a scrivener's error because you can't read, then what you'll know is that he could have been sent to El Salvador on that basis as well, because there was no withholding of removal there. So either way, he's where he needs to be. Now, asylum is a discretionary form of relief, and eligibility for this is foreclosed. Pam Bondi, by operation of law, foreclosed it. The AEA disallows for relief for covered enemy aliens. You cannot invoke withholding of removal when you're a terrorist. Sorry. We give it to good people, not terrorists. Likewise, aliens subject to removal under the AEA would not be eligible for statutory withholding of removal when the president says there are reasonable grounds to believe it's a national security risk. And we looked up that U.S. code. We even put it at the watcherlodge.com research file section. Nor may this court review our claims under the Convention Against Torture either. And moreover, there is no direct conflict between our obligations and sending people to CCOT. And we satisfy all of the statutory prerequisites here. This is an invasion. Trump has declared it accordingly. At minimum, it's a predatory incursion. There's raids and hostilities that occurred in Mexico in 1945. And invasion and predatory incursion don't necessarily entail military actions. Just look it up in a dictionary. An invasion is a hostile entrance into a country. And declared war is not necessary either. The statute gives the president the power to act even outside a declared war, as it must, because we already know how to declare war. We don't need the AEA to declare war or to give us war powers. That's already in the Constitution. The United States enemies do not invariably announce their intent to attack, merely consider the surprise attack by the Japanese or Al Qaeda on 9/11. The president is acting on reports and public intelligence, must have the ability to restrain and remove aliens, not only under acts of war. The founders realized this, Boasberg, which is why they permitted the president to act upon something less than armed conflict between the militaries. It's called an invasion. It's called a predatory incursion. It's not an act of war. It's something less. To give the president the ability to act in emergencies. Here, there is no question that the gangbanger TDAs have effected entries into the United States, contrary to the law, committing violent crimes, conducting criminal businesses, trafficking in substances and people. These are grave problems that affect the entirety of the entire nation, and the president has declared it accordingly. And the proclamation also says that they're connected to Venezuela and the government via the Maduro regime. The Cartel de los Soles coordinates and relies on TDA to carry out its illegal narcotics trafficking. Bunch of sources in there. But in all events, TREN acts like the governing authority in areas where it operates. It's in functional control. And there are other arguments saying, well, Tren de Aragua was not a nation, so you can't do anything against them. Don't match the rules under the AEA. And they say we should have a voluntary departure, right? Well, you got to give them an opportunity to self-deport. Well, they had that opportunity. They didn't take it. Petitioners haven't established irreparable harm, and the balance of the equities favor the government. And so in conclusion, they write, the motion for a preliminary injunction to you, Judge Boasberg, should be denied. Signed here by Drew Ensign and the rest of the team on this very important case in Judge Boasberg's courtroom. So we'll see what ultimately comes from him. Of course, the gangbang lawyers will submit their reply, and the judge will issue his ruling. We'll be here covering it. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. But here is another message from ICE Director Todd Lyons. He's saying, look, well, these people are still in our country. If you're a sanctuary city and you're going to be housing them, Tren de Aragua, MS-13, other illegal gangbangers, you're going to be in big trouble.
With more from the acting ICE director, Bill, what else did he say?
John, he said he's happy with the 66,000 ICE deportations they've carried out in the first 100 days so far, but he adds they can and they will do a whole lot more than that. He says they're just getting warmed up, and he told us he's got a message for sanctuary cities.
The more they're going to double down or triple down, we're going to ramp it up more. We're going to make sure that we're doing all we can do to bring our law enforcement resources to that jurisdiction, and we're going to take care of those public safety threats. If you don't want to work with us, we're going to handle the problem.
And we also talked about Operation Tidal Wave in Florida last week. That was the biggest operation ICE has run yet, with ICE and Florida law enforcement partnering to arrest 1,120 illegal aliens. Lyons tells me expect to see a whole lot more of that across the country.
That's been our longest sustained operation. It's only going to keep going. We're going to use this model. We're going to go across the nation. States, local municipalities that want to work with us, we're going to capitalize on that. Well, they want to help ICE secure their neighborhoods, get these criminal aliens out, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to work together.
As it stands right now, ICE only has about 5,500 deportation officers nationwide. House Republicans in their reconciliation bill, they want to give ICE money to hire 10,000 more ICE officers. Lyons obviously hopes that happens.
Nice.
It would be amazing. It'd be a game changer for us because we could actually respond to all the public safety threats that are out there. I'll give you an example. When we did the operation in Boston, we had targeted enforcement when we knew these criminal aliens that had been released from jails, from courts, from sanctuary jurisdictions that detainers weren't honored. But while the teams were out there conducting this operation, in real time, more criminal aliens were being released.
Ridiculous.
Lyons also expressed some frustration about narratives when it comes to ICE targets. He says media and politicians often portray them as innocent victims who have done absolutely nothing wrong. Yeah. He says people need to start doing a little bit more research into criminal backgrounds, their histories, and why ICE is targeting them in the first place.
Yes, I know. Gay scholars from San Francisco who do makeup, who are only here to work on their PhD and make pupusas for their mamas. All right, so that's the Boasberg case. We're going to keep our eye on this one, an important one. Contempt proceedings, purging contempt, Supreme Court orders. Thanks for subscribing and sticking with us as we cover this case and more. All right, now let's turn our attention over to the Kilmar saga. And here it goes. The Kilmar BODYCAM now released. We remember this story where this wife-beating illegal alien MS-13 gangbanger who was deported to El Salvador was busted, allegedly human trafficking, not charged, but stopped by Tennessee police. They did an investigation, called the FBI. FBI said, let him go. A lot of questions about who he was moving around and who was inside the vehicle are now being answered. So we've got this body cam footage that was released over via Fox News. Colin Rugg got the full clip for us. Says Garcia was allegedly involved in human trafficking, and one officer at the end of this video explains, yeah, we all know what this dude is doing. He didn't pick them up and take them out for construction. And there's questions about whether these are men or women in the back of the car. You can be the judge on the gender or sex of this person and come to your own conclusions on that. But I did hear another senator in passing say that there were women in the back of that car. I don't know what they would be doing here for construction. But then when we're done with this, we got some other audio that was released. So this clip is now from Kilmar's wife, the same wife who is out here today speaking about how much pain and suffering she's in. We unearthed old audio from her in court where she was saying he slapped me 3 times. And we've read through 2 orders of protections here on this channel that she drafted in prior courts, pleading for help, saying, help me get rid of this gangbanger out of my house, please. He's scaring my kids, beating me, ripping my clothes, causing me to bleed, giving me black eyes, slapping me 3 times and more. And so the story just gets worse and worse, but Democratic lunatics like Van Hollen can't get enough of Kilmar. He's got a fever. The only prescription is more Kilmar. And what you can see is in the body cam footage, this, as a reminder, was when he was coming back allegedly to Maryland, and he was driving his boss's car. His boss, the person who actually owned the vehicle, did not, or had rather already been convicted for human trafficking. Big surprise. So he lends his car to Kilmar. Kilmar then drives all the way down to Texas, picks up 8 people allegedly are in the back of this vehicle, and is driving them back to Maryland without a driver's license. Okay, he doesn't have a valid license. The Tennessee cops stop him, investigate him, call the FBI, ask about it. FBI says, let him go. And off they go back into the inner geography of the United States of America. And so here's the body cam with all that in mind. Date is November 30th, 2022. And here is what it looks like on this late night ride back into the US of A.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Good, and you?
All right.
Everything good?
You got a bunch of people in here, don't you?
It's 1 for 6. Yes. Go back to work.
Gotcha. Where you working at?
Where?
Where?
San Luis, Missouri.
Missouri?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I'm from Maryland.
Okay. Now the reason I stopped you, we was running 75 down through here.
75?
Yeah. Of course, it's just 65 through here.
I know. I'm going to 70.
Going 70?
Yeah. What's the limit right now? Is 70 or 65?
It's 65.
I can see it, sir.
You got all your
Because
info.
I see the other, the speed limit. I see the 70.
Yeah, it jumps up and down.
Like that. Yeah. My license.
Yeah, your driver's license, your registration, and your proof of insurance.
Oh my God. Okay, sure.
You what?
The problem with my license right now is expired, right?
It's suspended?
Suspended because I have my permanent employment, so like 2 years experience. So I need so right now I waiting the paper for migration for I go to the MBA. So
Okay, so they clip some of that audio out. Now, if you're driving on a suspended license in Arizona, that's a misdemeanor. Okay, they just say, oh, you're driving on a suspended license, you're not allowed to be drive, you get arrested, charged with a crime, or maybe they'll just cite you and release you, but they'll also generally impound your car if they can't turn the car over to another person who can drive the car. So just to be clear, okay, so you hear the left and many people screeching about like how abusive and how abused these illegals in our country are. When you're going to watch what happens is basically nothing happens to him. If you're driving around without a license or on a suspended license, okay, there's really kind of two cases where this pops up. If you don't have a valid license, they'll often charge you with a civil offense on that. Just, but if you're driving on a suspended license and you should not be in your car, they'll charge you with a crime and impound your car. So you, or this may have happened to you, used to represent people all the time who'd get driving on a suspended license in Arizona, have their cars impounded and get charged with a misdemeanor, usually resolved very easily with a civil plea, but abused, okay, because they didn't pay a ticket that they didn't know that they got from some traffic camera ticket, okay, all the time. You get abused. Let's see what happens to this dude. He just said, I have no license, it's suspended, I don't have it, immigration, whatever. Let's see what the cop does.
that car no is mine, so it's to my boss.
So where do y'all live at?
Where I living? I live in Maryland.
Maryland?
Yeah, also.
Whose vehicle is it?
What, excuse me?
Whose car is it?
It's to my boss.
Your boss?
My boss, yeah.
Where's he live? Where's your boss live?
My boss right now is staying in Maryland, but he lives in Texas.
Okay.
Houston, Texas.
Have you got the proof of insurance?
Yeah, I don't know where to put it. My boss. Let me call.
So where are you guys coming from right now? Where are you coming from?
From San Luis. So I work in San Luis. So right now, finished. That place finished. So I go back to the house for Maryland. Next week, I'm going to make it tonight with the other project.
I thought you was going to Missouri.
The next project, I told you, the next project next week is everybody going to Niceville. The next project, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
What do y'all do?
Huh?
What kind of work is it?
It's construction, like remoderation, painting, drywall, everything like that.
Does anybody else have a driver's license?
Driver license?
Yeah.
No.
Nobody?
Only me, so.
No, you don't have a driver's license.
Can you find your insurance?
Si pueden buscar la insurance.
No, he doesn't have any insurance.
You say?
Your insurance. Can you find it?
I called my boss because I don't know where put the car.
Okay. I'm going to go back here and run your license and stuff real quick, okay? I'll be right back. How dark are your windows?
Huh?
How dark's the back windows?
It's human.
Window?
Yeah.
Stand by.
It's human trafficking level tint. You know, it's ultra lemo, hides even multiple bodies back there. So it's very thick.
How dark are they?
The colors.
Yeah.
From Texas is good.
How many rows have you got in here? 4?
Where?
4 seats? 4 rows of seats?
Yeah, three seats. Yeah, with him. Yeah.
Did y'all put an extra one in?
Huh?
Did y'all put another one in?
No.
That come like this?
Use the The truck.
I've never seen one with that many seats in it.
Well, yeah.
You hear me? What you say? It's my boss.
I said I've never seen one with that many seats.
Oh,
in
really?
It. Yeah. That's why I was asking if you could put an extra one in.
No, it's the same. Like this.
Okay.
You know what you got, right?
Brought a dog out there. Looks like they sniffed.
You know what you got here, right?
No.
He's hauling these people for money.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing. But
Yeah.
sometimes they commingle dope.
No. But
He,
squatted.
there's 8 people in there.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know that. They put an extra row of seats in there.
Yeah. So he's getting paid to haul these people, probably to Maryland, I would say.
Yeah, probably to Maryland. So that's the body cam. I'm sure there is much more of that, but turns out wasn't arrested. Nothing happened. Didn't have a driver's license. Nobody else in the car had a driver's license. If you're driving your car without a driver's license, you get harassed, you get ticketed, you get impound. They impound your car. Okay. They lock it up for 30 days. You go through hell. I've represented many people, many good people, just on the way to work. No idea. Illegal aliens can traffic 8 or 9 people, might be women back there. That person in that passenger seat kind of looked like a woman trying to pass off as a dude to me. We do know the trans de Aragua is a thing. And maybe they're gay barbers. I don't know. But what we see is clear criminality. Cops on the scene, right, generally have a pretty good idea of what's going on. Oh, yeah. He's trafficking those people. Human trafficking. They're not going around to do construction. So that's just one. Now, here's part 2. Today, we had this short clip. I know it's hard to listen to a lot of this screeching, but here is Kilmar Abrego Garcia's wife, who is either under duress, being pressured by the ACLU or MS-13 or the Democratic Party at this point, or the CIA like Chris Van Hollen, and coming out and saying the exact opposite of what she said in her 2 orders of protections, where she was begging the court to stop this maniac from abusing her, beating her, and threatening her kids, locking her kids in cars, locking her kids in bedrooms, and causing her to bleed and have black eyes. Little different tone, but here's where it is today, and here's what she sounds like at a speech this afternoon.
It's been 50 days. 50 days of pain and suffering. 50 days of uncertainty. And as we finally saw the proof that Kilmar was alive, my children and I had to watch Trump and Bukele's administration laugh over pain.
Shape. So she's going to be like David Hogg now and turn this into a congressional run or something. And I don't know who this person was back here in ultra close proximity. See this? I don't know if it's a dude or kind of looks like Bob from Fight Club, I think. I'm not sure who it is. Maybe same actor. But anyways, standing there almost like, you know, like you're grabbing somebody. You're like, you better say it right. Is there like a knife back there? Like, you know, right in here? Like, say it. Say it. So that's what she's up to. And what's interesting about this is it sounds a little bit different. Like her tone is a little bit different than August 2020, when the USA Today got this conversation where she was, I guess, in a courtroom making her plea to the court to save her from a gangbanging, human trafficking, MS-13 illegal alien in our country. Here was Jennifer just not too long ago.
To fill out a protective order. I think it was in December. But I didn't show up to the court because his family like washed my brain telling me that his dad was sick and not to do it. So I didn't do anything. But
so she's subject to duress and compulsion as documented in court. The family has already done it before, and it caused her to change what was in her best interest, to be clear.
But after that, it was like, I would call the police. I have a lot of police reports, and I kept trying to get to the door basement to try to open the door, and then like he pushed me. So then when I was able to go outside to get a phone, I called 911 from a disconnected phone. Now they took a long time to get to the house. It was probably like 20, 30 minutes. So I saw a neighbor walking his dog, and I opened the door.
Cops took 20, 30 minutes to get to her house because they know it's an illegal alien or something. They've already been there many times before.
And I was like, help. And then when he heard me, like, he grabbed me from my hair and then he slapped me. And then the neighbor, like, he didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to react. I have pictures of the evidence, like all the bruises, because it's not, even on Wednesday, he hit me like around like 3 a.m. He would just wake up and like hit me. And then last Saturday for my daughter's birthday party, before I went to my daughter's birthday party, he slapped me 3 times.
Wow.
And then last week I did call the police. My sister called the police because he hit me in front of my sister.
And where are the police? Where have the police been? They never arrested this guy, apparently, because they kept telling us he had no criminal record. Even she came out. She's like, help us get Kilmar back. He's such a loving husband and all these things. And that sounds like a long history of abuse. Now, that was August 2020, 5 years ago. And you might say, well, a lot has changed since then. And maybe he's like a reformed person or whatever. But they lied to us. They came out and said he was an honorable, loving father and all the things. She's got 2 orders of protections. She didn't call the cops, but she did call the cops, and the cops didn't do anything. This is an American citizen. As much as you might be irritated with her for now coming out and being, team anti-Trump now, and Trump and Bukele, she's going to be a David Hogg type Democratic superstar for whatever reason until they drop her like a hot potato. But this is like direct evidence of an American citizen being abused by a gang-banging illegal alien in our country. She says on record multiple times she's been beaten. She's called the cops. Cops take 20 minutes to get there. No one cares. And now the Democratic Party has made this guy their hero, their number one superstar. And they're exploiting her to this day for their own twisted political ends. It's a disgusting party, and this guy is leading the charge. Van Hollen is still posting videos about this, literally like yesterday, May 1st, still doing this. Trump admin admitted in court it never should have abducted Abrego. He never said that, and is defying a Supreme Court order if it never said that. And Bukele is complicit in this illegal scheme. No, it's not. That's why Senator Tim Kaine and I are forcing a vote on our bill to hold him accountable, and we hope they do. Okay, we don't even need to listen to him. I hope they do. Bring it. Bring your little stupid bill and go vote on it. We think this guy's probably CIA because his mommy was. But what is really ultimately happening is that American citizens are being harmed, just like Jennifer Vasquez and many more. We have the White House and President Trump posting this, sharing what's happening on the lawn of the White House. This is a moving video from angel parents who have lost
Angie Morphine Vargas,
their loved ones.
I'm mother to Ruben Morphine. He was executed in the streets of Salinas in 1990. 34 years later, I could still cry for him like if it was yesterday.
My name is Maria Herrera Vega, and I'm the mother of Marine and Border Patrol agent Javier Vega Jr. Our son, who went by Harvey, was murdered August the 3rd, 2014.
My name is Chris Odette. I'm an angel father. My daughter, Krisha, was killed September 12th, 2014 by an illegal alien in Rockwall, Texas.
Yeah.
This is my son, Ryan, and his girlfriend, both poisoned to death by illicit fentanyl. I can't bring my son back, but we are doing all of this to save the future Americans from being poisoned to death by fentanyl.
My name is Agnes Gibney. This is my son, Ronald Da Silva, who was murdered by a previously deported criminal illegal alien gang member.
My name is Angel Ma Miriam Mendoza. This is my son, Sergeant Brandon Mendoza of the Mesa, Arizona Police Department, who was killed on May 12, 2014 by a repeat illegal criminal. Thank everybody in this administration for finally paying attention to criminals who harm Americans.
We thank the Trump administration from the bottom of our hearts.
Without them, there would be no justice for my daughter.
We're finally getting some justice in this country for our children.
This right here is what should be living here in America, not criminals that are coming in right now.
And that is the true cause. That is the true damage that we're seeing caused by this illegal immigration, these illegal aliens in our country. And finally, we're starting to correct the record. Now, the Democrats will lift up this man, put him up on their shoulders, and demand to have him and many others in his class return to America. They'll do it under the guise of due process, but the little fact is they want them to have more due process than you get. You get stopped for not having a license, you get your car impounded, you get arrested, charged with a crime for that. You're an illegal trafficking humans. FBI Christopher Wray just let you come through, and it is causing death and destruction throughout our country, but no more. Here is Senator Eric Schmidt from the great state of Missouri explaining how this is going to cause a sea change in the future of America now that we're finally solving these problems.
I don't blame the factory laborer in Vietnam who takes the job that once belonged to an American. You know who I blame? The people in power who allowed them to do it. I blame the corporate bosses, the special interests, and yes, the politicians who sold our country out for a seat at the table of the globalist banquet.
To get fat and rich.
I blame the ideologues of the status quo, the international elites, the so-called citizens of the world, who see our country as a global economic zone, a giant shopping mall with an airport attached. I blame the people in cities like this one who seem to have forgotten what the men and women, the towns of like Boonville and New Madrid are their brothers and sisters. Because American is not just a box you check on a tax form, but a sacred responsibility that binds us to one another, an unbroken chain between our past and our future. I do not know what the future holds, but I do know what the past has meant. I know that something has to change, and that President Trump is the first politician in a generation to even care enough to try. The 77 million deplorables who cast their lot with Donald Trump last November were the forgotten Americans, the blue-collar patriots, the conservatives of the heart, miners, mechanics, tradesmen, and farmers, men and women who work with their hands, who grew our food, built our homes, and drilled our fuel, whose labor powered our country, whose taxes sustained our government, and whose children served and sacrificed in our wars. They stand with this president because he stood with them when no one else would. I yield back, Mr. President.
Yeah, Eric Schmidt. Okay, so nice, powerful statement there to close that segment out. Little heavy there at the end, obviously, because there are real consequences to this. It's not a game. The Democrats can sit there and say, due process, blah, blah. You've got plenty of due process. You guys know it. Everyone knows it. You're trying to smuggle in illegals and create a legal mechanism that prevents us Americans from protecting our own country by deporting them, by preventing their deportations that should have never been necessary in the first place. So we're going to keep our eye, obviously, on the Kilmar case. We hope you subscribe and join us as we do. All right, now we got one final segment on the day, and then we'll hear from you. Here is the latest out of Arizona. Criminal charges now brought against this person called Joshua Castro. May not ring a bell for you, but he did work for Katie Hobbs, the governor of Arizona, saying a former Arizona employee is being charged with human smuggling. Puts Hobbs's nominee in hot water, and Katie Hobbs as well, since she loves illegal immigration. Now, what we'll go through is this article just to get our background on this, but the real story is in the criminal complaint. You can see this was filed in the District of Arizona, right on our southern border. And this dude was a Hobbs employee. In fact, he was an inspector, a produce inspector, was arrested earlier this month on suspicion of allegedly smuggling 2 undocumented Mexican immigrants for money. When they entered the country, Border Patrol agents saw the car, and he was working at the agriculture department. So he's down there. Yeah, I'm just inspecting things, smuggling illegals. And you always know it's not the first time, right? How many times did he do this before he got caught? The agent saw the car cross illegally. Katie Hobbs, Arizona's governor, who's terrible. We got so many blue people in our positions right now. Arizona, next time, we're working hard. All right, Hobbs said the situation is unacceptable. Katie Hobbs said, I'm outraged by it. The former employee's been arrested. They fired him. He's not an employee anymore. Action was taken on that immediately. She's like, you're fired. Get him out. And action has been taken within the department to ensure this is not a more widespread issue. Yeah. They strongly condemn it and more. But the Senate is poised to pick the new Department of Agriculture here. And so he's going to get hammered over this. How did one of these employees start trafficking illegal aliens? So let's take a look at what happened here. Criminally charged in the District of Arizona out there in Tucson, telling us, here is the statement of facts. We've got two of them. Count one is a felony, saying violated federal law because on or about April 10th, not too long ago in Arizona, Joshua Castro, in knowing or reckless disregard, brought in illegal aliens. These two people, one dude named Diego, one other dude named Ignacio, brought them in, transported and moved them into the United States for private financial gain, human trafficking, and making money doing it. Busted. Then he also got charged with a misdemeanor, saying that he was helping them avoid being identified or captured, avoiding them being apprehended by trafficking them in his car. So here's the facts. They say, all right, here's the deal. On April 10th, in Nogales, Arizona, way down there at the border, at approximately 5:45 p.m., Border Patrol agents called BPAs observed a black 2013 Chevrolet Impala with a single occupant bearing Arizona license plate 7470 traveling westbound on West International Street and quickly turning northbound onto another drive. The vehicle was previously identified as a vehicle that may have been used for smuggling in the Nogales area. Had been doing this a lot. Now, the day prior, the same vehicle was seen leaving the same area at a high rate of speed. And BPAs, the Border Patrol, observed it enter the interstate northbound, exit at Mariposa, and then re-enter northbound. They said, well, these driving tactics are commonly used by human smugglers to determine if law enforcement is surveilling their vehicles, right? So like getting on, getting off, getting on, getting off, looping around, getting on, getting off. Somebody following me? Nope. Okay. At approximately 5:52 on April 10th, Border Patrol regained visual of the vehicle. Okay, he's doing loops, found him. Up there he is, traveling back south on Hereford Drive, then eastbound on the West International Street with two additional passengers in the rear seat. Oh, that's weird. Where'd those people come from? So they followed the vehicle as it began traveling northbound, ran a records check on the vehicle, and initiated a vehicle stop for an immigration inspection of the occupants. Now, that's interesting, right? So if you're a defense attorney, like, well, that's an illegal stop. Where are you? And you start to challenge that. The vehicle exited at Ruby Road and immediately yielded on the off-ramp. Border Patrol approached the vehicle and asked the driver, later identified as Joshua Castro, if he's a citizen. He says, yeah, I am. Border Patrol then asked Castro, well, who are these two people in the rear seat? Castro said, well, I don't know. They asked for a ride, and I don't even know who they are. I don't know. Just driving around, just picked up some around. So then they conducted an immigration inspection of the two passengers, later identified as Diego, and determined them to be citizens of Mexico, illegally present in the U.S. Oh, no. Records checked revealed that they did not have proper documentation to enter, pass through, or remain in the United States legally. Now, material witnesses, Diego Ramirez stated, yep, I'm a citizen. So the dudes that he picked up are now going to be useful in the case against him. See how that works? Not good. He was charged 150,000 Mexican pesos to be smuggled into the United States. Did this dude pick you up? Is he smuggling you? Yeah. How'd you know? I don't know. I paid some money to some dude. He says, I illegally crossed into the United States. I walked 30 meters where he hid. Then I got instructions to walk to another location. They told me to go to a red house. A black vehicle would come pick me up. Once he saw the black vehicle, he ran to the vehicle, entered the vehicle, sat behind the driver. While inside the vehicle, he heard the driver confirm with someone on the phone that both subjects had entered the vehicle. Yep, got him. Yep, got them both. Material witness is this other person, the other dude he picked up, Ignacio. He says, oh yeah, I'm from Mexico too. He says, I was going to pay $12,000 to be smuggled into the U.S. He illegally crossed into the U.S. alone, was guided by cell phone until he arrived near a house. He was instructed to wait. While waiting at the house, another subject arrived, and a few hours later, a black vehicle came, picked him up. He entered the vehicle, sat behind the passenger seat. He described the driver as a young male wearing a black hat and glasses. Busted. So the two illegals he picked up just explained everything. So yeah, no, that guy was our ride. And yeah, we paid a lot of money for him to be involved in this. And now, of course, the case is filed and he's charged. So you can see it's filed out of the District of Arizona. Doesn't look like he's got an attorney. Looks like he completed a financial affidavit. So he might be applying for a public defender. So if you're a citizen and you're charged with a crime, you gotta qualify if you're going to get counsel. But if you're an illegal gangbanger, like, it's too bad he's not an illegal gangbanger, because then senators would probably be buying him margaritas and the ACLU could be appointed to represent him. But I don't think that's happened yet. I don't see any notices of appearance of any attorneys here. And the Border Patrol is also going to try to detain those two other people. So Diego and Ignacio. He's saying, nope, they're material witnesses in this case. They have testimony that is material about how they came into this country illegally. And if we let them go, then they're going to leave. They're going to go back to Mexico, or yeah, right, they're probably going to go to New York. But because of the above, we'd like you to hang on to these people as witnesses in future proceedings. So that came in from Border Patrol. We'll see if the judge does anything with that or releases them. But that has been filed, and there are more investigations that are happening. So this one dude obviously worked for Katie Hobbs as an inspector down there at the border. Wasn't inspecting much other than facilitating illegals coming into this country. But in addition to that, we also had another investigation occur. Bill Malugin from Fox News reported that Homeland and Secret Service served a criminal search warrant in an upscale Irvine neighborhood this morning, targeting the suspect that they believe is responsible for posting flyers of the names, photos, and phone numbers and locations of ICE agents in Southern California back in February. Whoa. The target wasn't home and an arrest wasn't made. That dude's fled. We are told he lives at home with his parents and was previously arrested at UC Irvine, doxing all the FBI, all the DHS agents. So they served an arrest warrant on that one. You can see they brought in the big guns for that raid, and we're not playing around on that one. So he doxed a bunch of them, I guess, was posting these images saying, here are these ICE agents. They don't take kindly to that. So that occurred. We also saw there was another judge that some time ago was actually caught facilitating illegals out of her courtroom, but was not ultimately prosecuted. She has a hearing coming up set for June 9th. Her attorney said, well, they couldn't reach the attorney, but the charges were originally dropped. She was a Trump appointee. She helped a twice deported illegal evade federal immigration officials back in 2018. Those charges were dropped. Now she's going to be investigated. She's going in front of the Judicial Commission, and we'll see what they do to her. Probably not much. But that happened. Now, meanwhile, other prosecutions are being contemplated. Tulsi Gabbard was on with the great Megyn Kelly and was asked about Crossfire Hurricane, right? All of the 2016 fake scandal, Russian collusion hoax nonsense that the FBI tried to concoct to deviate Trump's election back then. Are there going to be any prosecutions? Is anybody going to be held accountable for those? We got a pretty big list here of what we'd like to see happen. And we can start with Crossfire Hurricane if we have to.
Part of what we're doing in our investigative work as we go back and look, for example, at Crossfire Hurricane and how there were assistant U.S. attorneys who were knowingly using manufactured testimony, that they would interview a witness, for example, and know that the witness was lying to them, either because they set up the lie or they knew that the witness was lying, took that lie and used it as evidence to get a warrant under FISA to go and surveil on Americans, which is completely illegal. And so these are the kinds of things, those types of people, those assistant U.S. attorneys or those FBI agents that were involved in this kind of stuff, these are crimes that need to be prosecuted, and these people need to be held accountable.
Will that happen?
That will happen.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act.
That's right.
That's what it's
Yeah,
supposed
it's
to
a
be
good
used for.
reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a good reminder. Thank you, Megan. And it would be nice if other senators would remember that. Maybe they should watch her show. All right, so we got that. Now, Trump was also out talking to the youth of America saying, look, borders are not racist, okay? They're definitional for a nation and for a country, and we're going to protect ours.
For asking me to go through with that stuff, but it's pretty descriptive, isn't it, really? It helps when you know that borders are not racist, speech is not violence, America is good, terrorists are bad, men can never become women, police are not criminals, and criminals are not victims. Eighth, everybody should believe. For asking
That's right.
me to
We're
go through
protecting
with
our
that.
borders. We're protecting our nation. Thank you, Mr. President, for leading the way. So Katie Hobbs and the rest of the corrupt officials in our government now running scared, whether it's inspectors, judges, or other criminals. The Trump administration is coming for you. All right, so here's what we've got if you broke the law. So, my friends, it's been a beautiful stream today. And if you're just joining us, a quick recap on what we covered today. We spent some good time here talking about Trump's response to another injunction in Judge Boasberg's courtroom. And we read through it. Very nice filing by Drew Ensign and the rest of the team there, explaining how Judge Boasberg has no jurisdiction. And even if he thinks he does, he's going to lose on the merits because the AEA is lawful, valid, and it has been codified in the law for a long time. So all of this attempt to undermine his authority will fail. And that, of course, is going to work its way back up to the Supreme Court, and we'll see what they do on it. But we then talked about Kilmar. 2 new bits of evidence and audio that was released. First of all, very loud. We went through 5 minutes of the body cam footage from his traffic stop in Tennessee, where he had 8-9 people in the back of the car. Might be a woman. I think it is a woman. But then stopped, investigated, and let go, let free by the Joe Biden, FBI, and the corrupt hacks there under Christopher Wray. We also listened to the audio recording from 2020 when Jennifer Vasquez, who now says that Kilmar is not a gangbanger and is a loving, caring husband, when she went in and said, I've got bruises, we got multiple police reports, multiple police phone calls, multiple photographs of the damages, and more. Democrats don't care about her abuse. They'd rather just have illegals in our country because that's their party now. So we talked about that. Then we wrapped it up with this criminal complaint brought against a former Arizona government official who worked for Katie Hobbs called Joshua Castro, who was down at the border picking up illegals and trafficking them back to Lord knows where. Now he's caught. Now he's being prosecuted. And we're starting to see some nice progress in rooting out this corruption. And so now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. And thanks for joining us on this lovely Friday. I hope your week was outstanding and amazing, and you accomplished every single thing on your to-do list. And I appreciate you supporting us with your super chats, your donos, your memberships, and your viewership. We appreciate you for being here. We got some great comments coming in. Let's say hello to who is here today on this incredible Friday. What's up, John and Donut? Clipping for us on the evening, and we've got some nice new Membo gifts. Membos, remember, we'll be back tomorrow. We do a members-only stream on Saturdays. YouTube friends and locals friends, if you're a Membo, we'll see you back here tomorrow. What's going on? Hey, it is a Friday. It's great to be here. Thank you, Donut. That bird looks excited as I am. What's going on? Hey, Robert Carey. Thank you, Robert Carey, for becoming a supporter. We appreciate you. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Rick D, we got a happy anniversary in the house. 1 full year, Rick D. Happy anniversary to all of us here at the Watcher fam. Wow, a year goes fast. So glad I found the Watcher family. Rick D, we appreciate you too, man. Thank you for finding us. Rick shares great links, great comments, great insight. Lots of fun. We appreciate you, Rick. Really, thanks for being here for a year. You're on locals too, so we appreciate you being over there. Rick D, hey, Senator John Fetterman delayed a flight to Pittsburgh and argued with the pilot about wearing a seatbelt. So we're talking about that. See, I told you Rick has great links, and he's also on local. See, right there. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow, because there was also on the Membo stream, because there was also a New York Mag article that came out about Fetterman. It's like the dude is gone. He doesn't read anything. He doesn't show up to briefs. He doesn't do anything. So yeah, we're going to do a little Fetterman segment tomorrow. Thanks, Rick, for that. Hey, Gloria B, 25 months as a Membo. How many babies is that? Coming up on 3, I think. Got to get a calculator. Wow, how fast time flies. Good to be here, Gloria B. It is good to have you here. Thanks for being here and hanging with us for so long. We've seen some stuff together. No doubt about it. This old guy says, the El Salvador Constitution has a clear habeas provision. The deportees can file there now. Exactly right. There's El Salvadorian. Is that how you say it? El Salvadorian, or is it El Salvadoran? Is there an I at the end? Ian or N? I don't know. We had a strong debate about Qatar versus Qatar today, too. And it was great, because then I played a news segment and they said it both ways. So I was vindicated both ways. It was great. So anyways, yeah, they can file down there in El Salvador, in the El Salvadorian courts. Nance, what's up? Thank you, Nance, for becoming a Membo. We'll see you tomorrow on the Membos Only stream. CF Rob is here on Rumble. Says Schumer's object with appointing lower courts judges is to dismiss cases they don't want, to continue up the line, and to install the cases they want, to cause hell on Republicans, in my opinion. What do you think? Oh, I think you're absolutely right, Rob. And we were covering the old bait and switch that was happening before the election, after the election. Remember that Schumer made this like trade with McConnell that they would give up a couple Court of Appeal seats if they gave them all the lower court seats. So they did. So the Republicans like, okay, fine. Yeah, appoint all these lower level judges, but give us these 3 courts of appeals judges because they'll retire. Then they appointed all the lower court judges. Then all the retiring courts of appeals judges unretired. And the Republicans got nothing and got totally abused. Thank you, Mitch McConnell. Mock Schnell bringing in 20 new membos. What's up, Mock Schnell? More speed coming in with new friends. Taz is here. Ty Carter coming in. What's up, Al Fallon? Random Human Thing is here. Stella Bella, Michael Nissen, you. What's up, Anthony Muma? Leland Chung. What's up, Bill Hansen? Prospering Woman. We got Pinecone is here. Tammy Johnson, Christina Shore. What's up, Dax Nth? Saloma in the house. We got Anand Radu Kaur the Wanderer in the house. Bill Jarzemba, welcome. Captain RB and Ron West, all gifted membos, courtesy of Mock Schnell, bringing in 20 new membos. Thank you, Mock Schnell. Sheila the Pooh bringing in 10 more. Thank you, Sheila the Pooh. A million hugs to you in the house. We got Oiko 812 in the house. What's up, Brimstone Triple D? Robert exclamation. Conservative singer Jordan Chavez. Greg at home. R Child Day. What's in the house? Death by Chocolate. Oh no. Del Marev, Will W. All gifted membos, courtesy of Sheila Pooh. A million hugs to you. Thank you for that, Sheila. We appreciate you. Here's one of a podcast on air podcast. Did you guys see the podcast of the baby and the dog talking? It's pretty funny. Yeah, the AI, pretty funny. Off-Label Podcast. What's up, Off-Label Podcast? They're right next door on the tubes. Thanks for bringing in 10 new friends over here. And we sent you guys over there yesterday. Hopefully you checked out the show. What's up, Jericho? Sean Springer. What's up, Dorcas Williams? What's up, Anita Graziano? We got this one from Laura, Ines Porter, Jim H., James Law, The Cat, and Joseph Morelli, all gifted membos, courtesy of Off-Label Podcasts. You can subscribe to them right next door on all the platforms. Mock Schnell, 20 new membos coming in. Thank you for that, Mock Schnell. Look who's here. Freddie, Acrimonious, 00. Wersound, Bilbo Beggins is here. Shanna Vega, Marty Folker. Stay weird and keep gaming. Welcome. T-Jaws. We got Soft Gray Dove. Diane is here. Jamarkey, Southern Sass, London C. Welcome. Stephanie H. Linda Goytil. We got AC is here. Cowbowed World, Jim Rivis, Fervor Rel, and Marine for Life, gifted membos, courtesy of Mock Schnell. That's 20 more friends, Mock Schnell. Thank you for bringing them in. Don is here. Says, judiciary hacks here assume control of El Salvador. You know what they say about assumptions and what happens when you assume. You make an ass out of you and me. Sheila Pooh, all new members. Don't forget to like this video and share this content. If you can, pay it forward. Gift another membo when you can. It's awesome advice, Sheila Pooh. And thank you for being the first domino in that sequence for many folks. Membos come in, they get a taste for the Membo streams. They say, this is pretty nice around here, not bad. And they stick around. And our community continues to grow. Thank you, Sheila, for being a part of it. Curtis Bartle, 34 months as a Membo. Definitely need a calculator for that one. Says the swamp is over. Doge forever. SCOTUS will fix. We sure hope so. We sure hope so. Sheila Lucas. What's up, Sheila Lucas? Great to see you. Thank you for signing up, becoming a Membo. Milo Phone Bill says, why not hire 84,000 agents instead of 84,000 IRS agents? Yeah. 84,000 Border Patrol agents, right? Like if it's in the budget, just move it over here. Just change their badges out. You now work the border, so go down there. Mr. E, 19 months as a Membo, says, how do we know that they're even legally married? It's a good question. I'm sure somebody looked it up. A certificate of marriage. There's probably something on the docket somewhere that shows that. And it may, I don't doubt it. If he's being deported, it makes sense that they would race to go get married to try to stop that from happening. Hey, he's married, his wife's here. They've been doing that anyway. So I would suspect that they're married. Here's one from Doan. How long does Deputy Dog in Tennessee keep his job? Well, I mean, I don't know that he did anything wrong. Like if he got overruled by the FBI and the feds, he's like, you guys, should I take it? No. Okay. Let him go. Okay. It's like the feds come in. So how's he going to be blamed for letting him go if he's ordered to let him go and his supervisor said, let him go? It's wild that happened. You get arrested for that. Yeah, you get arrested. That's multiple felonies, human trafficking, all that. You go to jail for life. Yeah. Dennis Cannell, what's up? Thank you, Dennis. Thanks for becoming a Membo. We had a great members only stream this morning too, by the way. We got 3 good segments in this morning, so check that out. What's up, Knox? Hey, happy Friday, all. I spoke with an investigator today. Knox is a defense attorney in Texas, who told me the side story of a CPS placement house that had to take everyone, no refusal mandate, and ended up being a bunch of MS-13 members who torched her house, literally. That's great. Yeah. Well, that's probably her fault for being a citizen of America. Yeah. So we show mercy to the MS-13 members who burn down American houses and who burn down or punch women in the face and who traffic illegals throughout our country. Knox says defendants are told to explain that they are moving workers from one site to the next job despite total lack of tools and often no work-aged males in the car. That's my question. Like, I wanted to see who was in the back of the car. Were these dudes who were going to go lay brick, or were these women who were going to be trafficked into our country? Or underage people? Like, were there kids back there? Did they check everybody's ID? Why did they let him drive on a suspended license? EGAD. I know, it's like shocking to me. Driving on a suspended license is one of the most common crimes. It happens because people just don't know, right? In Arizona, we've got traffic cameras everywhere. So you'll get a traffic ticket in the mail, or you won't get it because the mail's crap, or some process server will say they served you and they didn't. They'll suspend your license. And until recently, there's a law that just changed, but that would be, if you're caught driving on that, that's a misdemeanor. It's a class 1 misdemeanor, the same as a DUI. They impound your car. It cost you $500 to get it out at least. By the time you get it out, something's stolen. Your sunglasses are absolutely stolen every time, and you're screwed. But if you're an illegal, should have just said, I don't speak English, and I'm going, that's a great defense, I guess, if you're in Tennessee. I don't speak English. I'm just passing through, moving from job to job. Oh, whatever you want to do. Apparently it's good enough. Just call the FBI. Deluxe Knight. It's the same for us here in Washington with suspended license. I had to go save a buddy's motorcycle from being impounded once because he got pulled over for a helmet law, found out his endorsement permit was expired. Buddy got the no helmet ticket and a warning for the rest. In my opinion, I was there because I was there and I knew the officer. Oh yeah, no, definitely. They'll impound your car right there. In law school, I did a ride along with a cop. We impounded like 6 cars that night. It was crazy. Just impounding cars all night long. You know how much money they make from that, by the way? Because then you got to pay the ticket. And usually a lot of people can't even get their cars out. So the impounds of the cars are crazy because they're often like very, like poor people who get their cars impounded and they can't pay the impound fees. So the car gets as cheated to the state, forfeited to the state essentially. And they don't have a car. I mean, it's a real sick thing. You can really come down on like it'll make you sick actually when you see what policing does to certain communities who are already basically devastated, right? You'll hear the phrase, it's not just about serving and protecting, it's about tax collecting. I'm not saying that is true about all cops, but there is absolutely a component of law enforcement that is about that. And they actually think in numbers and process cases in numbers. We had this many impoundments, we had this many arrests, this many warrants were retrieved, this much collected on past due fines, all the things, right? Anyways, yeah. So if you're an illegal, though, you can human traffic in our country illegally, and they'll just let you go. The rest of us are slaves to the security state. What's up, Greer? Dave Maxwell in the house. Thanks for bringing in 5 new members, Harold. Dave Maxwell, what's up? War Person is here. Wow. What's up, Marcia Golzer? We got What Say Drew. Drew Breezy's in the house. We got this one, Jeremy, coming in. All gifted members, courtesy of Harold Greer coming in. Sheila Poo says, she does what many abused women do. She stays in a bad situation because she's more afraid of the retribution if she leaves. The abuser convinces them they will never be free. Yeah, and it's a real heartbreaking situation when she's already made this plea for help multiple times, has called the cops multiple times, has been to court multiple times, and now she's finally free of her abuser. And the Democrats are exploiting her to make her get her abuser back, right? That's how like sick and twisted it is. Bring this dude back and get out there and speak about how much you love him after he's beaten your face in multiple times. Pretty sick. Former says, I can finally make sense of Kilmer and Jennifer. Chump don't want no help. Chump don't get no help. I don't know who you're talking about. Maybe Jennifer. But she was trying to get help. She was screaming to a judge, help me. Cops had multiple opportunities to intervene. They just let an illegal run wild. And as we saw yesterday, he said, I could kill you. He said, I could unalive you and no one can do anything to me. He's right. He can human traffic 9 people. No one cares. Richard White, what's up? CVH is going to burn political capital to try to force a vote. Majority leader sets the schedule. A vote on a Democratic bill would be a favor and not a cheap one. I'm not sure what that is. Sounds like budget stuff, Richard White. And I appreciate the update on that. So I'm sure that's battling out right now, too. Thanks for the dono, Richard. Chubby says, I'm hoping that soon we'll see Bukele make a public statement condemning the accusations being made against El Salvador and him specifically by Democrats, particularly Van Hollen, and say that it's directly affecting the foreign policy between our nations. And that doing so can give the administration some leverage to use against the vitriol that Van Hollen keeps spewing. Would be a sight, though I know not likely to happen, but I can dream, right? So like Bukele comes out and he's like, things are getting I'm getting pretty irritated by the United States condemning us. And there may be repercussions. But meanwhile, we know he's kind of just bluffing. Then Trump takes that and says, see, look what you're doing. It's an interesting and smart strategy there, Chubby. Good one. What's going on? Doan, have you heard of Hobbs' possible connection to a prominent criminal organization on the other side of the border, real estate or something? Yeah, I've heard a lot of rumors on that. And I think there were some stories about that. I think somebody had a big expose and then retracted that. And I think that person who made that expose is now being sued for other things. I don't remember all the details, but yeah. I have heard about it. Nothing that I found to be credible enough or interesting enough to share here, but I have heard rumors about it and seen stories in passing. Pinochet, his name was Robert Paulson. Yeah, that was that dude who was like holding her right here. This guy right here. His name is Robert Paulson. Is that him? It looks like him. It does, right? It looks like Bob. And that was a great movie. Yeah, what's up? Sheila Poo, 1,000,000 hugs to you. 10 more Membo friends coming in. Thank you, Sheila, for bringing them in. Who's here? Juju in the house. We got Guy Vermectin. Deacon Demented. Mr. M'Excuse Me is here. Brent Bonnell. We got Conservative Supreme. Antoinette Alvarado. What's up, William Foley? Pauline Hausler and JJ, all gifted Membos, courtesy of Sheila Poo. 1,000,000 hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila, for bringing in a bunch of new friends today. We appreciate it. Abel Baker, says vote next week in the midterm primaries. Give Trump the Congress he needs to remove the activist judges. Vote like the future of our nation depends on it. It does. It absolutely does, Abel Baker. I came across another clip today. I think it was, who was it? It was Glenn Kirshner on with some other lefty person. And they were just screaming about retribution and how once they get power, they're coming out AGs. Like if you think anything that Trump has done is like aggressive, just imagine what the Democrats would do if they got back in charge. So we got to codify a lot of this stuff and really set a strong baseline for the future, or else they're going to come back in psycho mode. ELZ, a friend of mine, James Tambora, and his wife Barbara were run over and left to die in a street by an illegal alien. Jim died on the scene. Barbara lingered on in the hospital a week before passing. He was apprehended in Miami trying to get on a plane to leave the country. Support them all from ELZ. Yeah. Rest in peace to James and Barbara Tambora. Absolutely killed senselessly by an illegal who should never have been here. We pray for them and their families. What's up, Doan? The evidence needed to convict en masse for Crossfire has been collecting dust at the DOJ for almost a decade. Yeah, and by now, I mean, it's almost 10 years later. Like the statute of limitations are going to be expiring on many of these things. And we want justice, so it's irritating. FD man, Federal Material Witness Statute, 18 U.S. Code 3144 in the House. Thank you for the citation on that. FD man on Rumble. Sam in Texas is here. 11 months as a member. What's up, Sam in Texas? Dang, Rick beat me to it. Which one was that? Was that the Fetterman post? Maybe Sam in Texas? Yeah, Fetterman. It's a wild clip. I watched it earlier today. Sam, Fetterman's like, I'm not going to, like, my seatbelt. The pilot's like, you're going to do it or you're going to get off the plane. Talking to him like that. I'm like, kick him off, man. Chetty Mo, what's up? 11 months as a membo, says still a baby. That's true, still a baby. But we're working on number 2, Chetty Mo. Thanks for being here for 11 months, coming up on that 1-year anniversary. Nathan Haynes, what's up, Nathan? Nathan's got 2 babies right there. Check those little babies out. Congratulations to you, Nathan Haynes. Thanks for becoming a membo. And congrats on your babies. What's up, Richard White? It's simply Salvadorian. So there is an I. So it's not Salvadoran. Salvadorian. Hey, Bell South is on Rumble, says, should I subscribe to your locals or your Rumble account? So I think locals, because I don't think Rumble owns locals, but I don't think if you sign up on Rumble that it automatically connects you to our locals. So if you're looking for the extra content, locals would be the place to sign up. And thanks for even considering it, Bell South. We'll be looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. We have a great community there too. Hey, what's up, Tortuga Chick in the house? Thank you for bringing in 5 new Membo friends. Harley's dad is here. Sliding Edge. What's up, Kevin Farrell? M joining up. And Jason Forsyth in the house, courtesy of Tortuga Chick. Thank you, Tortuga, for bringing in new Membos. What's up, ex-Bear fan or Eek Bears fan? When I asked about the order the other day, I was referring to the Supreme Court Easter weekend emergency TRO. Want to see it go. Yeah. And so was that the Boasberg TRO? Was that the one that we just talked about today? I don't remember the date, whether it was Easter weekend or what, but I think I agree with you regardless of what TRO you're talking about. We want to see them go because they're issued by, it's either going to be the Zenas case or the Boasberg case, which were both those emergency orders. I feel like it was the Zenas case because that one was, I think, closer to Easter weekend, but regardless, ex-Bear fan, they haven't updated either one of them. And both are proceeding forward. Hey, Casimir Guzzi. What's up, Casimir Guzzi? Thank you for sending in a nice super chat. First super on the live stream. First time's the hardest. Gets easier from there. S. Quinn. Hey, watching yesterday on the replay, so had to wait till alive to tip. When you referred to the guy in the tree, like he's a kitty, you said. I snort laughed. Well, what was he doing up there? Yeah. It's like, they get up there. They get confused. Those cats up there, like, what's going on up here? They can't get down. That illegal did the same thing. He thought that they would just leave. Oh gosh. Thank you, S. Quinn. Yeah, yesterday was wild. Hey, Abel Baker is look at this dude making some sourdough. That's how it looks when I try to make sourdough. Abel Baker, what's up? Bringing in 5 new Membo friends. Thanks for doing this, Abel. Adam A is coming in. David D, welcome. Brewers in Arizona. Good to see you. Colin Lyon and Richard Fox. Gifted Membos courtesy of Abel Baker, who's a very able baker. What's going on? Alan Harkin. Good to see you, Alan. Very nice to see you over on Rumble. Thanks for the nice dono, as per usual. Always so generous. Says, awesome dissertation as usual. You rock. Thank you, Alan Harkin. You rock too. 1972, Alan Harkin in the house. Been a great friend of the show for a long time. Always super generous, Alan. Hope your week was amazing. I appreciate your support as always. And thanks for hanging on the show. Blue Varro, 23 months as a membo. Thank you, Blue Varro. Yep, that's coming up on babies, multiple babies. Looking forward to having them together with you, Blue Varro. Thanks for being here. All right, let's say hello to X and see who's joining us over on the X platform before we wrap it up and go over to locals for our members only after party, where we will debrief, hang out, and unwind on the day. We had a couple of other comments on X. Here's one from Fred Petamonte. Says, stopped by a cop last week for no registration. Said I paid my renewal, looked online. Then he looked, couldn't find it. He was going to make Johnny and me walk 4 miles. I'm disabled. Then I found the canceled check, the look on his face. Wow. So Fred, you almost got your car impounded for no registration. Man, you should have been trafficking 8 illegal aliens and pretended like you couldn't speak a lick of English and just said you're going to a job site. Almost made you walk 4 miles until you proved to yourself that you're allowed to exist in America to some cop somewhere. So that's great. Glad you did that and he let you go. Almost could have been a different story. James Pepper, what's up, James? Shouting out Laura Loomer, always shouting out Laura Loomer, says the husband of U.S. California District Judge Jennifer L. Thurston can't arrest any more illegal aliens and shared an entire update over there. So that is from Laura Loomer. Thanks for flagging that for us, James Pepper. She's always digging and posting juicy bits. Jody, what's up? Says, as per Sportfish, I'm going to go make a pulled porco pupusa for our food truck. Well, if you're getting into the pupusa game, I don't know, you better arm yourself up. Get some bulletproof vests and some heavy firepower in case you got to bust a cap, you know? George, gee whiz, Rob, you're really having some internet problems. Are we? Says Trump needs to swap in and promise Kilmar's wife protection. I bet she would talk. I don't know. She seems pretty embedded with the Democrats up at this point. But those were some great comments over on X. Thank you for sending those in on X, my friend. And Deluxe Knight says, Rob, did you see this from Tom Homan yesterday? You know, that smirk and that smile? Yeah, I think we did. I think we played it on the show, Deluxe Knight, yesterday. He went, and he said, wait till you see what's coming. They're freaked about that, actually. So the governor of Wisconsin, I think, posted a response video. We'll probably play that tomorrow on the Membo stream. But he's like, Tom Homan's going to come and arrest me. And he posted a whole response video. Pretty funny. But my friends, what a beautiful week it has been. And an amazing stream today on this lovely Friday. Thank you for hanging with us. Thank you for all your contributions today to support our work and for being here, watching the show. I really appreciate it. It's always a lot of fun to go through this stuff together with you. It's history, and we're a part of it as it's happening, and it's a real honor and a treat. But we will pause there for the weekend. Of course, we want to thank our mods and our amazing meme smiths and everyone who helps bring this show together. K-Bean, Donut Mind Me, Carrie B, Playing Hooky, Dog Digger, and Janek. Also, Just Rhonda, who's on YouTube. Our purveyor of fine emojis, Elliot, who's on Substack. Our Doc Master and Poet Master, and of course, Geegum Geegum, who's just amazing all around over on Locals. We appreciate all of our friends out there. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. Thanks for hanging here. Thanks for subscribing if you haven't already done so. And of course, we will be back next week to get into it again. But in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends, and an amazing weekend. I'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye.